You are listening to Down Home.
Here versus There, Part 2. This week, we continue our conversation with Kevin Yarde about systemic racism here in Canada.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground.
But yeah, that's the trip to Nova Scotia. That sounds awesome. I have a story to tell. Actually, you were talking about the roads going out to Preston. My first car that I bought, my father gave me.
The K car?
The K car, the Super K, super K. And the thing leaked oil like nobody's business. So I took it to Jiffy Lube because I had a job and everything. Like I was 17 or whatever. Took it to Jiffy Lube. The guy put it up on the rack, looked at it and put it back down and said, "I'm not fixing that." So I took it to my father and I said, the guy at Jiffy Lube won't even touch it. I said, Dad, follow me, and started driving out the new road out to Preston. And oh my gosh, man, like he grew up in the Cherry Brook area, which is close to New Road. He was going through these twists and turns, and I was going, oh man.
Yeah.
I said,
you might not make it.
I know. I said, Lord, help me, man. I was trying to follow him and got to this place, and the guy hoisted it up, and he got caulking out, like caulking that you put in your tub.
Yeah.
And had some copper tube, and he yanked the line and started doing all this stuff with the copper tube and the caulking.
Yeah.
He said, "I gotta let it dry. You might want to come back tomorrow." I said, and so Dad said, "Okay, I'll bring you back. I'll get in my car." And I'm driving home my dad's car, and I said, "Is that safe?" He said, "Boy, I just paid $20 for that. That's safe." Yeah, that's
$20.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, rich history, and it was great that you got to experience that.
So sorry, can I ask you guys a question? Because definitely wasn't a part of my history in terms of my teachings and learnings growing up in terms of the education system. What was it like for you growing up in Scotia? And was that something, and the history, was that something that was discussed, talked about in school?
Jay?
It was never really talked about in school, not too much. They would touch over subjects, and then you're on to the next thing. I think we really learned about our history from our community, which was just so rich with it. And, I look back now and I was like, oh my goodness, what a strong community, despite everything that went on. And, so that's where I learned my history. And being able to be raised by my great-grandfather, Sidney Jones, who was a part of Nova Scotian history in a lot of ways, just sort of, when he was older and he was bedridden for the last 2 years of his life, his mind was there, but his body was failing. But we had these great conversations, and he would tell me about his story, about how he grew up. And, he was born in 1899, and that always was like, wow, you were born then. And, living such a long life that he lived, I was privy to a sort of a rich history as far as where he came from, our family history. And what I look back and how strong of a man he was, So, that part of my life was important because it really taught me strength and resilience, which is something we have today anyway.
As far as history, I remember having to do, it wasn't called history. They merged history and geography. It was called social studies. I don't know if they call it that these days. So you had a social studies book, and I think it was grade 5 or something like that. And we were tasked with picking a subject and writing a short 2-page essay on it based on the information in our social studies book.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, I'm flipping through. I don't want to, all the explorers don't want anything to do with that. Canadian Shield, who cares? Keep on flipping through. And I said, well, there's got to be something about Black Nova Scotians in here. I'm flipping. There was one page on the Moors, and that was it. So I did my essay on the Moors, and there was nothing else on Black history in that whole 300-page book.
Wow. Yeah.
So the only sense of history that I got, like Jay was saying, is from our elders. My grandmother, my mother, and I really picked it up when my son Malachi had a genealogy project, and I dived deep into that. Oh my goodness, I took the project over. I think 2 weeks later, Malachi was like, "Oh, thanks, Dad."
What grade did you get?
Hopefully, he got a good grade. Hopefully,
he got a good grade.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that really piqued my interest, and I learned a lot about my family, about Scotian history, like concepts like the Book of Negroes. I heard what it is, but then delving deep in the history of it, it's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, it reminds me of an experience as part of one of the Soul Journey trips where we went to Alabama. And so as part of the itinerary, we were going to go to a plantation. And so we get to the plantation, and about maybe 15, 20 minutes in, you can see the kids looking at each other, right? And what was interesting about the experience was they were telling the story from the slave owner's perspective.
Oh, really?
Really? Wow.
So you got a group of 40, 50 Black youth and adults, and really wanting to hear about as much as possible the experience, and it was just from the slave owner's perspective.
Wow.
So they would take you out, and there was a cemetery at the back of the property, and so it sort of gives you the lineage of the slave owners, and so the kids, understandably and rightfully, saying, well, what about the enslaved? Well, we're not really sure, somewhere over there. And it was and we talk about the erasure of history, right? And there was such anger, understandably, right? There was such anger from the kids, right? It just felt, again, another example of your sort of history.
Yeah, man.
As difficult as it was being erased, but the one thing it allowed us to do was have conversations about, we're living in a time, as much as they want to erase history, anecdotally, through curriculum, that we can access our own history in a way that we weren't able to before. So there's definitely the oral tradition, and if you've access to the elders, that would be amazing. But it's about researching, and the information is there. So taking that anger, that frustration, and really accessing your history in a way that we shouldn't have to, because it should be integrated, right? Because it is the history of America, it is the history of Canada, so it should be integrated into our learning. But because it's not, we do have that ability to go out and seek it out. And so one of the things that's amazing to see now are so many programs and initiatives through the Black community that really speaks to teaching young kids, especially, their history and their experience.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
The age that we're living in, it's everything's a click away, which is it's great. It is very good.
Yeah.
We might as well talk about this now. This the results of the elections, because you mentioned about the erasure of our history, and one of the policies that Donald Trump, maybe by the time this podcast airs, would be former President Donald Trump. One of his policies was to defund
systemic racism training.
Systemic racism training.
Yeah.
Hopefully, the election results hold, and President Biden and Vice President Harris get in. That is probably something that will not hold if they do get in. What do you guys think about the announcement that was announced today about Biden Harris winning?
You want to go, Jay? Or
No, go ahead. You go
Yeah.
ahead, Kev.
you know, I was thinking about, and I think where I went was how I felt in 2008 when Obama was elected, and I think at that time there was a sense of joy, happiness, all of those sort of emotions, and I think as I juxtapose those emotions to maybe how I'm feeling now, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I'm fit, you know, so it's almost a sense of relief that we don't have, especially Black, racialized, and Indigenous women, the LGBTQ2 plus community, that you don't, you know, people living with disabilities, you know, all those people with marginalized identities, that you don't have to be bombarded with sort of relentless violence from what is, in theory, the most powerful office in the world.
In the world, yeah.
So I think there's a sense of relief, and obviously, as a father to two daughters, really acknowledging and celebrating, you know, Vice President Kamala Harris in terms of her roots in Indian, as the Indian and Black women as a VP. But you know, we talk. What is interesting was we talk about sort of erasure of history and who gets to write the stories, right? And so I was reading something earlier where they said she is not the first Black or racialized or Indigenous person to be elected as a VP. I had no idea. And then I had read something where it says Charles Curtis was Hoover's VP, and he was a member of Kaw Nation. But I had, you know, I had no idea.
Wow.
I had no idea.
No idea. So we talk about erasing the history, who gets to write the stories. There's a myriad of emotions that I'm experiencing, but I think that just one of absolute relief. Hopefully we can start to move forward. You know, you talked about, you know, it was in the election, sorry, it was in one of the debates where somebody had asked him, one of the moderators had asked Trump about systemic racism, and he said it's racist. and the reason they were no longer supporting, because President Obama, before he left, they had instituted that there would be systemic racism training through all government agencies. Trump and his administration comes in and they cancel that, and they say, well, no, because
it was racist.
Can you imagine?
That is the ultimate reversal. That's
my gosh.
Yeah.
Jay, what do you think, man?
Either way, it's the pot calling the kettle black, for sure. You know? I feel the same way in a lot of ways, just like for the simple fact that, you know, I felt sorry for America in the sense of this guy is not a leader, you know, everything, the list of what he is long, and that's the wrong list, you know? So I have a sense of relief as well, just because, you know, you're not bringing people together, you're tearing them apart, and just seems like an unkind man that was just too egotistical to, you know what power he did have and what power. Anyway, he's a racist, so there you go. I'm saying it. It's true. Like, I wasn't telling the truth, I'd be lying, right?
Yeah.
But and that being said, you still had, you know, how I think what's the total, 60-something million people who voted for him?
70 million.
Oh, yeah.
70 million people.
70 million.
So what message? So I think, you know, we'd love to say, well, this was just a Donald Trump problem, but this is a white supremacy problem.
Man, it's ingrained.
And it's a problem that doesn't only exist into the States, but it extends in Canada, and it extends globally. Right? So because he is not the president, and definitely that's a good thing, and we're making strides there, it doesn't mean that we've in any way come close to addressing the problem.
Yeah,
no, not at all.
I agree.
There's a big divide in the country, you know. So
and systemic and institutional racism goes beyond the individual, and it's a system. Right. And
in America, in America, it is the system. You know what I mean? Like they're so
But I would challenge that, Jay, and say in Canada it is the system.
Yeah.
As well.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
In Canada it is the system, right? And
Oh,
so,
most definitely.
so we've got our own work to do as well.
Yeah.
Very true. I really myself, I don't know if I was tired.
Oh,
because I'm not expecting too much, Ben. I'm not he's not going anywhere.
No.
Like Trump and Trumpism is not going anywhere. The 70 million people that voted for him are evidence of that.
Yeah.
And the real problem that I can see is anti-empathy. It's like, yeah, I see that problem. I see that there's anti-Black racism individually in my neighborhood, but it's not affecting me. I'm not like that. Like me and Vanessa were talking about that today. My wife Vanessa, we're talking about that today. A lot of the issue is, these people that voted for Trump, it's like he said that he doesn't believe in abortion, so therefore I'm going to vote for him. Or he believes in the oil industry, so therefore I'm voting for them. Yeah, the rest of it, I don't really care because it doesn't affect me. And I think that's the largest issue in all of the Western societies. It's this anti-empathetic, well, yeah, I see what you mean, but it doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
That attitude, and that's that's here in Canada too. And there's a lot of, well, no, this doesn't affect me. So why should I raise my head out and say something about it? There's a lot of that around. I find. I do. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean,
am I wrong?
As we talked about, right? It maintains the status quo.
The status quo, yes.
Right. So you're not thinking about sort of equity-seeking groups and those with marginalized identities. So even when you think about intersectionality and sort of even, when you look at sort of where Trump's base is geographically, sort of rural areas, right?
Rural
and so
areas,
even though economically they might not be any further ahead, there's something about whiteness and its proximity to power. Right. And that's the only explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only, Dave Chappelle jokes in one of his specials about, standing in Ohio and getting ready to vote and hearing people talking about how Trump, working class and working poor people, white in Ohio, about how Trump is really, he's speaking for me somebody who's taking my plight and is going to create policies that will have a positive impact, and sort of looking at them and saying, no, I'm rich. He's really speaking about me.
So true.
So,
I'm wondering how this is going to translate for Canada, though, moving forward. Like, I know that I think the glass is broken, though. Like these anti-Black views that have reared their heads North America wide, because it's here in Canada as well. I think the glass is broken. I really think like there's the People's Party. I know they're based out of Quebec. But if this organization, the People's Party, that doesn't believe in immigration, believes in like anti-abortion, all the rest of the stuff, like really Trumpism type views, the People's Party, if they were based out west, I think the membership would be humongous, and I think that they would be like given credence like the Green Party is. It's unfortunate, but that's the only reason that they're not given any type of credence is because they're based out of Quebec, and a lot of hate to say it, a lot of the white people out west, there's a lot of anti-French sentiment out there, but they have the same beliefs.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So it's here. It's just that they haven't been given an outright voice yet, but it's still here. It's simmering, right? It's underneath and if you go looking for it, you can find it. That's the other part that is very scary.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't have to look hard, right? So when you think about the impact of COVID-19 and the pandemic, and who's disproportionately impacted, right? And you see marginalized communities, you see Black, racist, and Indigenous people who've been disproportionately impacted by COVID. So you don't have to look far. So we started talking about the impacts of systemic racism. They're all over the place. We just haven't necessarily been trained to look for it, right? What we have done is sort of this belief in meritocracy. So you work hard and you get what is due. Right, but the myth of meritocracy doesn't speak to sort of the systemic and institutional barriers that people have to face.
True.
Right, and so I think, anecdotally, what I would say, and maybe what's different is, in terms of having these conversations at my agency, at Children's Aid Society, and maybe even thinking about the sector, racialized Black and Indigenous workers specifically have been having conversations about disproportionality, about systemic and institutional racism for years and years and years, right? And I think maybe what's different now is, you're now able to have these conversations in the open. And you're able to challenge and question in a way that wasn't always safe.
True.
Right. And I think that's the difference, right? So are we any closer? No, but the conversations that we're having are different. Right. And there's a different accountability once you start talking about these things in the open.
Yeah, everyone's more aware of things, and it brings so much to light. And I hope to believe that in the way the world is now, where people are open to these things, that the next generation is able to learn about their history, learn about, how much far we have to go, and hopefully they can be the ones that take us there by educating, and these systems be broken from within. And if you can have those conversations there, maybe people will start to look at things differently, you hope, especially the people of power, because they do want control of everything. There's hardly any Black judges. Most of the judges in Canada are white, and then it leads to the whole judicial side of justice when a lot of people out west, the population is mostly Indigenous people, and then God only knows how many, the percentage of Blacks that they're incarcerated. Like, those systems are in place to just take away everything, in the sense of what they always view us being is like, if you're Black, you're a threat of some sort. We have to police you, and we have this power over you. If you do get out of line, we can treat you the way, we want, because we really view you as savages. And that's what it looks like a lot of the time.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, we kind of come full circle, which is great. No, we did. We came full circle, because we started off talking about systemic, we ended with systemic. But there's one concept that I wanted to get your take on, Kevin. That was the concept of a post-racial society. Like, we had that, like when Obama was in office, there was a lot of people that said that we're nearing on that goal of a post-racial society. And then Trump comes along, which is almost a backlash to Obama on the world stage, literally the world stage, because the UK was dealing with its own populist racist uprising as well. How do you think that a post-racial society is within our grasp, and if not, why?
The short answer is no.
Yeah.
The long, more nuanced answer is still no. So we do, as part of the work that we're doing in our agency, we spend some time talking about racial socialization. Right? And one of the messages, so racial socialization is sort of the process by which parents shape their children's attitudes about race and show children how to fit into the context of race in their society. So as part of the training, we go through some of the different messages of racial socialization. So there's racial pride, being proud of who you are, and one of the messages is post-racial or egalitarian. And so what we're teaching people is, you know, I think maybe when we were growing up, and I know I'm much younger than you guys, but I think when we were growing up,
Slow down, man.
you know, when we were growing up, I think it was okay to say that I don't see color. You know, that was a way of people expressing their allyship, right? So I'm going to judge you on the content of your character, not the color of your skin. And so that was a way of saying, I'm not racist. So I don't see color, so I'm not racist. And what we're saying now is, no, that's wrong at all. But if you don't see my race, then you can't see racism, and then you can't mitigate it and interrupt it and disrupt it, right? So one of the things we say is sort of the racial status quo is racist, right? And so by not speaking about race, the status quo is inherently reinforced. So post-racial egalitarian misrepresents the world, but it's been normalized and accepted in society because white people, the dominant group, subscribe to it. So I think
it's true.
It's sort of the elimination of that as a good thing. And we need to get away from that thinking, right? And
Jedi
really,
mind tricks.
Really address our history of especially anti-Black racism.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot of work to do. You know, this is, and I think us talking about it, because I don't think there's enough conversations in our community. Let me strike that. There's a lot. The Black women are talking about it. We don't. And if the Black men are talking about it, it's behind doors. I think it's time for us to, especially in Canada, it's time to lend our voice to it. And it's not a confrontational thing here. This is why this podcast is coming about. But anyway, this was great. Awesome. Thank you very much for doing the podcast again.
Yes, Kevin.
It was awesome.
You were fantastic, man. And
Jay Jones, take us out.
Yeah, just thanks for coming out and sharing a little bit of your life, a little bit what you do, and that little is such a lot for the change to come, hopefully. And it takes people like you to add to the community to help people and sort of be a part of that force to do what you're doing. But this has been another episode of Down Home. We got DC Wise, Jay Jones, and of course, Kevin Yarde one last time. Thank you so much, brother. And
appreciate you guys.
We'll see you on the next episode. What was that rhyme from, was it Dr. Dre?
Oh, the next episode.
The next episode, yeah. Okay, don't start singing. No.
All right.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground.
You have been listening to Down Home. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground.
The song Breaking New Ground from The Breakdown.
On a high plateau, from the one down below to the future of the funk.